Good evening, this is the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Wednesday, November 2nd. It is 7 PM. We have a few continuances that we're going to take care of right now. The first one is Neponset Village LLC, 5 Pleasant Street. This is for a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws 40B. And at our last meeting, the zoning board said that this was going to go through the appeals process. It's an ongoing appeal with the Housing Appeals Committee. So we have nothing new to vote on that tonight. Patrick, do you have any update on that?
Nope, so similar to the previous two 40B cases that the board also appealed to the HAC, it's referenced on the agenda to basically notify the public that the current hearing is stayed due to the ongoing appeal. Once that is resolved through the Housing Appeals Committee, then it will be able to, resume either the hearing or obviously depends on the verdict with the Housing Appeals Committee.
Okay. But at this point, we don't have to continue it out to anything. We're gonna just,
continue it out.
we're gonna just let it sit because it's been stayed, meaning nothing's gonna, the
Yeah.
clock is stopped and everything.
The regulatory clock is stopped, and so it's basically within litigation at the Housing Appeals Committee, which it's a process, talking to town council, that could be, it's indeterminate how long that could be.
Okay, so that just is an update for people, but that will drop off our agendas in the future. Case number, let's see, for continuance, we also have case number 2212, Bristol Brothers Development Corporation, Renmar Ave and West Street. They're asking for a variance under zoning bylaws, section 10C 2A3 for the adult qualified village. And we have a letter from the applicant requesting that that case be withdrawn without prejudice. So, could I have does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Okay, so, first, I think we have to close the hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. So, could I have a motion to close the hearing for case number 22-12?
So moved.
Moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. Any further discussion? Okay, and this is just to close the hearing. I gotta just, have we had everybody here for these, the Bristol Brothers project? Everybody's been here? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Now, could somebody make a motion to allow the applicant to withdraw their request for a variance without prejudice?
So moved.
Moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. Any further discussion on the withdrawal? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. We also have a request for a continuance for the clock tower in East Walpole for 140 Washington Street, special permit under section 5B13G of the zoning bylaws for a 3-story, 6-unit mixed-use residential development at the clock tower. And this has gone on for quite some time. Just so the board knows, I think Patrick and I are going to engage the applicant and just find out what's going on, because there are concerns where it's just been continued after time, that it's not fair to the town or the public to have something like this sitting on the docket, so. But we will continue it. Patrick, do you know what they asked for a continuance date?
So when the applicant engineer, Dan American, asked for a continuation to the first meeting in December, which I believe is the 7th.
And
So
what, an extension of time?
they did not at this time, but they're good until December 21st, which was voted on at the last meeting.
Would somebody make a motion to continue case number 22-4 for the 140 Washington Street, also known as the Clock Tower, their special permit request, until December 7th, 7 PM here at Town Hall?
So moved.
Moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. All those in favor of the continuance, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. So, the first case is Matthew Naughton here. Okay, good evening. So you were here before with your house asking for a variance in the back, and if you want to just bring us up to date, this is for 11 Occident Circle.
Yep, we had applied for a special permit under, I believe it was chapter 9, verse 4.
Yeah, so it's zoning bylaw, section 9(4)A. It's a modification to a non-conforming building.
Right. And the existing structure is 7.5 feet from the rear property line. The rear abutter is the high school. And we were asked to move the proposed addition forward so that the new structure would then kind of conform to that existing 7.5 foot setback. So we went to the architect and
Yeah, we took the advice of this board and we sort of turned the addition a little bit so that it goes forward on our property a little bit more and maintains that 7.5 feet from the rear setback. And just to clarify, you know, there's an easement between our property and the high school, so it's about, 20 feet of wooded area, or 15 feet until you get to the chain link fence on the parking lot side of the track and the parking lot.
Okay. You just used the term an easement. Is it an easement, or is it just a
just the
wooded buffer?
the distance between the rear of the house and the chain link fence is about 30 odd feet.
Okay, okay. So on the plan that was submitted, that's updated, revised on October 25th, it shows a setback to the new addition as 8 feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the existing house is 7.5 feet from the back lot line. This is going to be 8 feet. It is not increasing the
Non-conformity or?
nonconformity. And on the side, it is, yeah, it's 29 feet, so that meets the side yard setback. Does anybody have any questions on this?
Just a quick question on the 7.5 foot setback is to what part of the existing building? Now, is that,
It is the rear corner, there's like a, extension, kind of a side, used to be a 3-season porch kind of thing.
okay,
And so it's to that rear corner is 7.5 feet.
thanks.
Is your question whether it was a deck or not?
Yeah, I just didn't know what it was, so I just wanted to.
So it's
get
part
some
of the-
clarity-
part of the house.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Hearing that there's no questions from zoning board members, and you're not increasing the non-conforming nature of this, did we have any comments about drainage from last time?
No, so the only new department comment was through the police department. It was actually a reference to the previous submitted plan, and they did not have any concerns with that. But let me just go through previously submitted the comments.
Oh, I think, I just, there's nothing, I don't have anything, so it's just, would be just standard conditions with this, so. First question for you is, do you want to close the hearing tonight?
yes, please.
See if there's anybody from the
Oh,
public.
yeah, is there anybody from the public that wants to speak on this before we close the hearing? Thanks, Bob. Okay, seeing that there's none, you want to close the hearing? This is a vote just to close the hearing.
So moved.
Well, would somebody make a motion to close case number 22-18?
Motion to close.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Drew. Any further discussion on closing? Okay, all those in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the special permit under zoning bylaws, section 94A, to allow an addition to a non-conforming building based on the plans for 11 Occident Circle dated, or revised for October 25th, 22, with standard conditions.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. Does anybody want to add anything else on this? Okay. Okay, this is to approve the special permit. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. Good luck with your project.
All right,
Thank you, very much
Thanks
appreciate
for,
your time.
Thanks for addressing our concerns at the last meeting. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next, we have 1429 Main Street. This is case number 22-7. And this is a special permit under zoning bylaws, section 2.2AB, 5-B13G, to allow modification of a 2014 Planning Board special permit decision, case number 1410, in which the special permit granting authority has changed. So it's now with the zoning board of appeals. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Attorney Christopher Alphen, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. It's been a while since we were in front of you, so I just want to go over exactly the zoning relief that we're asking for. I know we've continued the meetings for quite a while now. But what we're asking for here is that in 2014, this piece of property was granted a special permit and site plan approval from the planning board. And what we're seeking to do is that the site plan that was approved by that special permit in 2014 encompassed this entire lot. And what we're seeking to do is to remove a portion of the property, create a definitive subdivision approval, and change the site plan, which we've gotten that approval from the planning board, and remove this back piece of property from the lot that be encumbered by the site plan and be encumbered by the special permit. So what we're seeking from the zoning board of appeals is simply modifying that 2014 special permit to follow along with the site plan that was recently approved by the planning board that takes out this portion of the property from the special permit that was granted in 2014. Does that make sense?
it does.
And so, the reason why we're in front of the planning board is because the planning board's the one with the authority to grant the definitive subdivision approval. If you may recall, that many, many months ago, when we were first here, there was some opposition from the abutters. They were worried about how this property was gonna be developed. We've spent the last couple months having conversations with those abutters, the way that local zoning is supposed to work in Massachusetts, and we worked with the owners of the condominiums in these units, and we worked out a plan that everybody's happy with. There's no longer an objection from any neighbors, and at our last hearing with the planning board, there wasn't any objection from the neighbors, and they were happy with our plan. And I'll have John come up with the plan that we have, the definitive subdivision that was approved by the planning board. What we have now is a definitive subdivision and a site plan that includes landscaping here to add as a buffer for the neighbors, something that they were looking for, and to a buffer of landscaping for the neighbors back here. And John, do you have any other additions or the other things that we've done with this plan?
Well, this is the set of plans, so that the whole set's here. I mean, so John Glosser, Gloss Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. So we did a few things. We kind of bent the cul-de-sac backwards a little bit. I know this isn't really, it's sort of what the planning board voted and approved, but we bent this backwards. The owners here do not want to be looking at a single-family house, so we put giant arborvitaes here. The reason we bent it backwards was to give it a little bit more room so we could fit more plants in here. So it's a double row of plants. This woman was happy with the plants that exist here, and then she wanted just a few more here. These ones actually are existing, which will be coming down, but to supplement or to replace those, we talked with Mr. Lynch, Steve Lynch back here, and what he was looking for is just a double row of giant arborvitaes that'll be planted along the rear lot line. And as Attorney Alpin can tell you, because it's a subdivision now, the planning board can, through their bonding process, make sure that all of this stuff gets done, make sure that all of it thrives before they, or is, living and thriving before they will release the bond. So they will bond all of these plants, and then will not release that bond until they're satisfied that everything is done. And then Attorney Upton has put some language in a buffer zone.
There's a covenant.
Covenant.
That's gonna be given to the town. And all this stuff is kind of the purview of the planning department and the planning board. This really isn't a zoning question. We're just trying to give you some background of what's happened over the last couple of months with the planning board. But really what's before the zoning board of appeals tonight is just blessing that, the site plan that was approved by the planning board that just takes this portion of the property outside of the site plan that was originally approved in the 2014 special permit decision.
Okay.
And not to sort of try to sell you anything, but just the one advantage or the one asset that the town gets now is, Marion Street's a dead-end street with no cul-de-sac off the end of it. So trash truck and other trucks have to either back down the street or back out of the street right now. So that is one thing that I think that the town engineer pointed out to the planning board, that the town, you're gonna get one single-family house lot, and to create that lot, you're gonna get a cul-de-sac now at the
And in addition to that, which is probably maybe the most important part about all this, is that that back portion of the piece of property is just being, nobody's doing anything about it, and it's an eyesore. And, at the end of the day, the neighbors, including those who live in the condominium, are happy that somebody's gonna do something about it, because it's just sitting there and nobody's taking care of the property. There's a huge Japanese knotweed problem in that piece of property, and the idea is that, well, if we get approval to allow, this to be a buildable lot, then somebody's gonna be responsible and required to take care of that Japanese knotweed.
Patrick, on the Dropbox, that's how you get all our documents.
Yep.
I'm seeing a plot plan, but not this plot plan.
Yeah, that's because that's the definitive subdivision plan. So if you could bring up the site plan, that's really what we
You
should be
should be
looking at.
seeing something like this.
Okay, that's what,
Which is just simply breaking the lot into two lots. Proposed lot 1, 17,831 square feet, and then proposed lot 2, 28,732 square feet. So that's 8,000 and change more than you need, but then we need to put the cul-de-sac in there, and then there goes your 8,000 square feet. So the lot ends up 20,000 square feet plus a little bit, 125 feet of frontage measured in the way Walpole has it measured, and becomes a buildable lot now with the planning board has approved the definitive subdivision. So the last sort of step in this is to have this. ask
to
the
actually
zone-
split the lot. That's what we're being asked to do tonight.
Well, you're being asked to modify the special permit decision that encumbers the whole property. This is really, in my opinion, a sort of a procedural thing to clear up the situation, because really what controls is the site plan, and the planning board decided to modify the site plan. And so now what we're doing is we're modifying the special permit, which now, because the zoning board of appeals regulates mixed-use developments, you're the authority under that. And I think the other part that we just want to mention is really what we're focusing on here is the front portion of the property. That's what the special permit controls. And we were able to modify the site plan to better reflect what is actually existing in the front portion of the property, again, what the site plan, special permit approved. And we were able to make sure that the landscaping was in place, in the intent and the purpose of that original special permit as granted in 2014. That was reviewed by the planning board as well.
So obviously, Mr. Chairman, we were just showing you that because, you know, we just anticipated, if I was sitting in your chair, that would be my first question. Okay,
Well,
why are you doing this?
We're giving you an explanation why we were with the planning board this whole time, rather than the zoning board of appeals.
We've been following it, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Okay. Do board members have any questions or comments?
I did have just a couple questions on the other,
On the subdivision
yeah,
itself?
just,
Yep.
so the new lot is gonna be the back half, but, once that cul-de-sac is constructed, is the ownership of that entire lot will have the little curly Q around the bottom and that. In other words, if there is a single-family home built on the upper portion of that lot, is that person also owning?
They own, yep, you're exactly right. They own this little piece all the way around, like that. So what that does, though, is, you know, requires them to maintain the vegetation here. I mean, we did try, there was some sort of talk with the planning board about who would best be able or willing to do that, but in the end, the town engineer won out over the planning board, and it's on private property. But it's going to be, Chris could explain.
Yeah, it's a landscape covenant that basically restricts the property to make sure that they maintain. First of all, that has to be created, I think, before a certificate of occupancy is issued. But afterwards, it's gonna remain as a restriction covenant that's gonna be recorded with the Registry of Deeds that says that the owner of that property has to maintain those landscape buffers forever and ever.
And not just the arborvitae, but the whole section?
Yeah, the arborvitae's here, and the existing, and I'm not really sure what they are, it just says plantings. And then the arborvitae's back here. These ones are to be removed. These ones, if they are removed, have to be redone. You know, if they are removed to create that. This is the underground drainage basin.
So, Mr. Chair, just, I guess, not to interrupt, but essentially what is before the board right now is a modification to the previously approved special permit for a site that's already developed to, the plan itself was to divide the lot, which the applicant has done through the subdivision process. They've modified the site plan already to reflect the new plan of record. And so with the zoning board here, they're just simply looking to modify the plan of record to incorporate the new plot plan.
So it's really just,
Okay.
right, and it's really just this, and they're really, you know, we were able to convince the planning board that the site now is, you know, essentially complies with what their original approval required. So the owner did have to go back and plan a few things and fix up some stuff that wasn't up to snuff, but now they've come to that conclusion, so,
It's been a helpful exercise.
yeah.
Judy?
So the original site plan, that was, a special permit that was granted by the planning board, basically was to construct a 3-story mixed-use building with 5 condos above. So on that front part of the site, nothing's changing.
No.
Just wouldn't, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something, you didn't think about doing this when you went to the planning board the first time, or you did?
Oh, we did, yeah.
Okay.
We
All right,
got,
just
we got a
wondering.
determination from the building commissioner that the
Okay.
zoning board of appeals is now the authority for mixed-use developments.
Right.
I disagreed with him, but I do what I'm told, so, so we're here with the
But
zoning
you're
board.
saying when they originally built the building
Right,
at that
that
time.
was their,
They-
that was
they-
in their, that was in their sandbox, and now it's in ours.
That's right, exactly right, yep. Mhm.
Okay, and you're not changing any of the mixed use, you're not doing anything to the front buildings,
Correct,
everything's as it is, as I
Correct.
saw it today? Okay.
correct, correct.
Is there a reason why, was that just a
Well, 'cause since
clarification?
yes, that was a clarification, because where we deal with the use.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that there wasn't anything in there that front portion of the use was going to change.
Yeah, no, really, the proposal is just to take this piece off and then, you know, through the planning board, then build the cul-de-sac and create the one buildable lot.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else? Is there anybody in the public that wants to have a comment on this, or question?
I have a question about that. When was the last time the abutters were notified of the project?
Well, they've been notified about we've kept consistent communications with them. You know, because we've continued this hearing, I keep telling them that this gets continued and gets continued so that they know to not show up to hearings where we were just going to get continued. They've obviously gotten notice, they've gotten double or triple notice by certified mail of the planning board hearings. And I wasn't at the last planning board hearing. Was there anybody?
Well, Steve Lynch,
Steve Lynch has
was
been at
there.
every hearing, yeah, and Steve Lynch,
this woman here, and I don't know her name, it's not Ruth Chamberlain, it's a newer buyer, so, but she's been at the meetings, and she was satisfied with the plantings along here wasn't at the last meeting, but it was at the one before it. And then, you know, there was one or two owners here that once we changed once we did this, they were satisfied that now they have what they want, which is that they're on the second and third floors, so they've got a different view.
Right.
And so these are these giant arborvitaes, they're gonna start off at between 8 and 10 feet. But unlike a sort of a normal, a cedar or arborvitae, these grow a lot quicker, so it doesn't take long. I mean, it's not like overnight, but probably within 5 years, those will be blocking their view of the house here.
and we figured that out because we had Zoom meetings with them and stuff like that, and email communications back and forth with the neighbors, because we wanted to make sure that they were happy. If you remember the first time we had a hearing, there was a couple neighbors here, and we sort of addressed their issues during the planning board process. By the time we were done, they were satisfied.
Sorry, one other
Yeah,
question.
sure.
On your original application, it showed the snow storage in the back of the unit. What do you intend to do with that moving forward?
You know, I think that was some kind of Scrivener's error. How would you get the snow storage back here? Or it may have been on the original, we didn't do the original plan here. But normally what happens in a place like this is the snow is just kind of put along the edge of the parking lot until there's too much, until it's, eating up the spaces, and then it's taken away. I mean, so if you want to make that a condition, that's certainly reasonable, and I think that that's in all of these places now, that's what happens. Of course, with global warming, it may never snow again here, but that's pretty much how a site like this has to work. I don't know, and I'm sorry I forgot to address that, but I don't know where that came from, but it just makes no sense that you could put snow from here back here. There's just, unless you picked it up and put it in a truck and drove it around on Marion Street and then dumped it, nobody's gonna do that, right? I'm just making,
And there's a large slope there, too. It
Yeah,
just,
but I'm
it doesn't make sense.
That was some sort of Scrivener's error or just I don't know how that got on the plan. I know my guys, I think, copied it from the approved site plan that was done 7 or 8 years ago. So that's a mistake. So I would just say it would be pushed to the edges of the pavement, and once there's too much snow there, it's taken away. And so there's no reason why that couldn't be some sort of condition, if you guys have that ability at this time, I'm not sure, but.
Might also be an issue, more of a site plan related issue, not so much the use.
Yeah, I didn't see it addressed in that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
When you break up the lot like that, what is the plan to stop the runoff coming down onto that property?
Well, so, right, I mean, it's a good question. So this, if you looked at the topography, most of this water heads right to the
Correct.
back of this. And there were like 3 of these little drains here that the previous engineer had shown. I mean, this is gravel soil. So now what's going to happen is this roadway has a curb around it, and we have a catch basin here. So all of the water that falls on this property now is going to get into this catch basin here. Everything's drained, is graded towards this catch basin, and then it'll go into this underground storage, which is done through HydroCAD, you know, and it's capable of allowing up to a 100-year storm to soak into the ground. So the watershed area to those 3, you know, little area drains, they had some sort of perforations in the bottom of them, has now been reduced, you know, essentially to that, right? And this is sloping down where the arborvitaes are, but I mean, you've taken, you know, 28,000 square feet of watershed area out of the watershed, so they're not gonna have an issue now. Or I don't think they had an issue before, but they're not gonna have an issue after this is done. And so the town engineer reviewed that. Town engineer reviewed our, viewed our test pits on the day we did them. I've done a lot of septic systems in this neighborhood. It's mostly gravel up there without a lot of problems.
Thank you for the clarification. No further questions. Thank you.
Would you want that as a condition?
I mean, that seemed like a pretty sufficient explanation that's already been covered.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, do you want to close the hearing tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yep.
Okay. No comments from anybody in the audience? Okay, this is just to close the hearing. Somebody make a motion to close case number 22-7, 1429 Main Street LLC.
So moved?
Moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the case, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, now for the actual vote. Somebody make a motion to approve the special permit under zoning bylaws section 2.2AB 5-B 13G to allow the modification of the 2014 Planning Board Special Permit Decision, case number 14-10, in which, because the special permit granting authority has changed.
So moved?
Moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. And this is based
Mr.
on.
Chair, I'm sorry, I think we do want to reference that the plan of record.
Yeah, I
is
want,
changing.
right, that's what,
Yeah.
we want to have the zoning board plan of, reference. I just zoom in here. So, for the
Patrick,
zone,
probably the best way to do that is to say the plan as approved by the planning board.
Plans approved by the planning board.
Yeah.
I would agree to that too, Mr. Chair.
okay, well.
And the
what-
conditions thereof in the decision as well.
Yes.
But we don't have the plan from the plan, that's why I asked you the question about the plan for the planning board.
It is, so it's just the site plan itself, not the actual subdivision plan.
Right.
So that's that one sheet.
Okay, so that's this is what we're looking at, and really what we're dealing with, and it's a modified site plan dated. I'm just looking for the date on it.
10/14, well, 9/1.
2020.
I believe it's,
Yeah.
So the date
So-
there, and there should be a revision.
10/14, no, sorry, 9/1/22
It's the revision date.
is the revision date.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what we've got, is the revision date of 9/1/22 by Glossa Engineering for the site, and that's,
This was their latest revision. I don't know if that's based off of the site plan.
that's for the planning board.
They did the plan.
That was the, this is the most updated, right?
This one's the most up-to-date, 9/1/22.
Yeah, 9/1/22, yeah.
9/1/22. Okay. But, and Drew made a good, this, looks like the decision from the planning board has the last revision of August 4th, 2022. You have an explanation for that?
I think the best way to deal with something like this is for the zoning board to adopt the plan as approved by the planning board, because I believe what happened is the planning board added some conditions as far as you need to make revisions to the plan, and these are the revisions you need to make to the plan.
No, that's accurate. So there's the
Yeah.
approved plan, there's the final plan, so Mr. Glosser's provided the
What's
final
the
plan.
date on that plan?
Yeah, so what it is the August 4th has to do with
Right,
the
you build the
subdivision. That
cul-de-sac.
doesn't have to
Yeah.
do with this. There's no August 4th date on this plan. So, but the original plan is what was submitted. Others, additional revisions were more just adding some of these plantings just adding some more existing things that the planning board had questions about. You know, where are these trees that, the abutters are talking about, so,
But the site plan hasn't changed, right?
the site plan hasn't changed. None of this has changed, none of the lot lines have changed, just adding these different things that the planning board kept asking us, so.
So,
So it
you're gonna
doesn't-
back off what you just said?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. I mean,
Well-
you could do it either way. I would advise the board to just adopt the plan approved by the planning board, but you can also just say, approve the plan that's dated 9/1/22. That's totally fine. Either way works.
Okay. So, we would adopt the plan approved by the planning board that is also consistent with the plot plan provided to the zoning board with the revision date of 9/1/22 from Glossa Engineering. Everybody's good with that? That sounds good. So Patrick,
I think
you,
we do have to rescind the first motion, and then we have to.
Take your second.
well, I wasn't even completed with the
Okay.
first
Never mind
motion. That's why, so,
Gotcha.
that's why we started discussing it. So the motion that we have before us, just so we're clear, is, everything that I started to read about what they're asking for, the special permit, and then we're gonna adopt the plan approved by the planning board that is consistent with the plot plan with the revision date of 9/1/22 from Glossa Engineering for 1429 Main Street. Everybody good with that? You seem confused.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay.
Okay.
Moved by Drew,
Take the other one
Second.
away.
second by Tim. Okay, any further discussion on this before we vote? Okay. Okay, it'll be the 5 members voting. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good
members
luck.
of the board,
That
thank
was a
you.
lot of work for a single lot.
You're telling us, yeah.
So the next case we have is a new case, and let's get going with that.
Drew had a space. Drew just stepped
Yeah.
Thursday.
We're gonna,
This one?
The big one, yeah.
we're gonna just wait a second for Drew to come back.
I can give you this back to the,
That one?
this.
Oh, plot plan? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, John, so I think sorry if that got a little confusing, because there was the reference to the plan within the site plan decision. But typical, when you approve the plan, then you make the final corrections, and so that's why the date didn't really match up there.
Right. It's as clear as, it's crystal clear now
Yeah.
that we're referencing both decisions on that.
How are you?
Not bad, yourself?
Pretty good.
Good. Gotta say, I like the Dropbox. It's good. Okay, good evening, everybody. Notice is hereby given that the zoning board of appeals, town of Walpole, will hold a public hearing in the main meeting room, or in this case, this meeting room, of Town Hall on Wednesday, November 2nd, 7 PM, on the application from 931 Main Street Realty Trust, case number 22-27, with respect to property located at 931 Main Street, Walpole. Map 25, Lot 168, zoning district, Central Business District. The application is for a special permit under section 84C of the Walpole zoning bylaws to allow less than the minimum parking requirement. So for this whole project, that's really that's what you're talking
That's it.
about, is the special permit for less
Unrequired
parking.
parking, and I'll explain that here in a bit, but yes, that's all we're here for tonight.
Okay, and we have, we do have some comments that have been submitted online from town departments, and I can just hit them right here. We have a letter from the planning board, talking about swath path of fire truck, no parking, no standing markings, need to be posted. You can see all these. The street number signs need to be located on Main Street, and talks about elevator size being sufficient to accommodate an ambulance stretcher. So, that's from planning board. Fire comments,
I think that's actually, sorry,
was
that's
the fire
actually from the
comments.
fire comments. It's to the planning board, but it was also sent to me, so I think Deputy Barry might have meant
Okay.
to also put ZBA there. but-
talking about the swath path analysis for fire equipment. And let me just see what else. Also have from Luke Parlon from the police department, talking, asking, well, stating that they recommend a traffic study be done for the purpose of entrance and exit of this property. So we can talk about those issues tonight. Okay. Mr. Mackey, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Phil Mackey, 1256 Washington Street, Norwood, Massachusetts. Is counsel for and on behalf of the applicant. With me is Dan Merrickin, Legacy Engineering, and we also have Donnell and Jake Murphy, I know Donnell's a trustee, I think Jake's the one who actually does the work, to keep up the buildings. It wouldn't be a hearing if I didn't start off by giving you some paper. Don't laugh too much, Judy. Here you go.
Thank you.
There you are. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I don't really propose to read this verbatim, but rather at the high point. This is pretty much entered into record. So what we have here is the old Santander Bank building, and rather than go into ad nauseum about where that is, I'm pretty sure everybody here is intimately familiar with the site over the years. Santander decided to leave, much to my personal chagrin, because I used to bank there, but they did leave, the bank is closed, and so Mr. Murphy is proposing to rip down the existing building and rebuild. And Dan can certainly get into the particulars of the plan, but generally speaking, what the proposal is to put a podium-style building with a little bit over 2,000 square foot commercial footprint up against Main Street and have 2 floors above that and parking behind the building, so the second and third floor in the rear actually on stilts. That's the easiest way to describe it. So looking at the site and maximizing the parking, we can get 17 spots on site. And we are proposing 9 one-bedroom apartments. And so that leaves us as a deficiency of 1 spot. We are not going to ask to close the hearing tonight because we actually have our very first site plan tomorrow. And so what I have just said is what I believe we are asking for relief, but pending the planning board, things could happen. So before we close and finalize the plan, we're going to go talk to them first. But we can basically present our entire case this evening and then see what the planning board has to say as far as the site plan and hopefully close this out in relatively short order. Basically, the building itself completely complies with all of the zoning requirements. The residential space, again, it's the 3.5 times the commercial use, and so that also complies with the bylaw. So we truly are just here to talk about currently the deficiency of 1 space. So if we go through the criteria, and I'm flipping over to about page 5 now where that actually starts, 4 really. There are no specific criteria outside those of the general special permit. So the first criteria that we need to address is, does our proposal comply with criteria set forth basically in the standards, which refer to the granting the requested special permit? Respectfully, this is the Central Business District, and it being the zoning bylaw, requires 2 spaces per unit regardless of what size the unit is. And so we believe by proposing 9 one-bedroom units, we are possibly actually over-parking the residential use, but that's not what the bylaw requires. It requires 2 per, so we're 1 short. So that we think are in harmony basically with the Central Business District, and respectfully in varying other cases, granted each case is taken on its own, most of the apartments either actually built or proposed to be built have a lower than 2-to-1 ratio for 1-bedrooms. Specifically, if you remember, it was during COVID, we were doing this over Zoom. We had a similar discussion about the Bank of America building, where the board saw fit to go down to 1 space per unit. In this case, we're actually significantly above that. So we believe that we are in harmony with the general idea of the Central Business District. And also, the Central Business District is really pushing for pedestrian-oriented, train-oriented. This isn't right hard up against the train station, but it's not that far away. And certainly anyone who lives in the corner here is going to be walking to Conrad's, Jalapenos. Heck, they can go to TD Bank across the street, even though they can't go to Santander. The second question that the board looks at under this general special permit criteria is shall not have vehicular pedestrian traffic of a type or quantity to adversely affect the immediate neighborhood. And this comes up in a couple of different ways throughout this, but we respectfully submit that 9 residential units with ranging of size between 585 and 652 square feet is not going to have any impact whatsoever on this intersection. There are over 17,000 trips a day on 1A, and using ITE figures, the Santander Bank with a drive-through was a significantly more intensive traffic use than 9 apartments will be. And so we don't believe that we'll have really any negative impact whatsoever on the immediate neighborhood. Again, the next piece of, or next criteria is residents, employees, customers, or visitors. And again, we're talking that in the 9 apartments, no bigger than 650 square feet, so these are not even large one-bedrooms, and a commercial space of less than 3,500 square feet. So again, you're not looking at a grocery, you're not looking at any sort of large retail that's going to generate significant traffic, and we don't believe that there's going to be any noticeable impact to this particular intersection. The fourth criteria talks about complying with the dimension requirements, and we certainly can go over those in more detail, but if you take a quick look at the zoning chart, either in here or provided with the plan set, we meet or exceed all of the dimension requirements for the building. The next criteria discusses fire, explosion, emissions of waste, or other causes, and we would respectfully submit none of those are associated with a residential use, and the only commercial uses would be those allowed either by right or special permit within the central business district. And I think the town's done a pretty good job of regulating what's allowed there, so I don't believe any negative impacts will be associated with this. The next piece talks about noise, vibration, and other nuisance, and part and parcel with the same thing. 9 very small apartments aren't going to create any such nuisance to the neighborhood. There'll be a little bit of noise and dust during construction, but that's a construction-only piece. Once the building is weather tight, anything out from then on in would basically be completely quiet, or at least not impactful whatsoever to the neighborhood. We've talked about the neighborhood a lot. Next to it, again, just to kind of run through the area without getting overly bogged down, their biggest immediate neighbor is Conrad's. You can smell Conrad's at the other end of the center of town. It's not necessarily an unpleasant smell, but that is a much more of an impactful to the area than the small building will be. You have the rest of CVS Plaza, again, a fairly large generator of traffic, but again, those have their separate driveways. They are in no way associated with this particular project, so we would respectfully submit that we are not adversely affecting the immediate character of the neighborhood at all. And as far as the purpose intent of the zoning bylaw, we've already hit that several times. This is a part of the central business district. It's one of the few areas where you have multifamily by right, so long as you have the proper ratio between residential and commercial. We have been very careful to make sure that we stay within the by right calculations, and would submit that this absolutely is in character with the central business district, and by doing a mixed-use building such as this, we probably are actually at the highest and best use of the lot. That's pretty much my memo in summary. Pat was kind enough to orchestrate a developmental plan review. I believe we've incorporated pretty much all of their comments. There may be 1 or 2 that Dan is going to still address, but from the legal standpoint, that is the sum of my presentation. I'll turn it over to Dan.
My turn?
Yes.
I think everyone's familiar with the site. Existing circulation through the site is very similar to what's proposed, comes in off of East Street. There's parking spaces here, there's parking spaces here, there's some parking spaces over here, drive-through area, and then everything circulates out onto Main Street. This is all proposed to be demolished. And as Phil mentioned, what we're looking at here is a building that will kind of step back, which is nice in a downtown area, so you don't have 3 floors kind of right up on the sidewalk. So you end up with the commercial space is basically a 1-story element that sits forward, closest to the street. Above that will be an open patio area, deck area, that the residents could use. And then from there back, sitting over the parking lot would be 2 stories of mostly residential units, 9 one-bedroom units, with 1 commercial space. We have proposed, again, very similar to what's there now, one-way circulation from East Street out to Main Street, angled parking, which is very similar to what's there now. We did do a few things based on discussion with the fire department. One of those things was to take and widen the main driving aisle. When you have 60-degree parking spaces like we have here, you don't need under zoning a 20-foot wide driving aisle, but the fire department wanted a fire lane basically through the site. The other thing that was done is that the height of the first floor was raised to 13.5 feet, which meets fire code for clearance for emergency vehicles. So one of the memos that you have from the deputy fire chief is a blessing that the traffic circulation for fire vehicles and emergency vehicles that we provided to the town is acceptable. He had a few comments about where to address and where to show the address of the lot and things like that, which we can incorporate, but the overall circulation was acceptable to the fire department. So we have 12 parking spaces on the left. Some of those will be underneath the structure. We have 2 angled parking spaces on the right, one of which will be a handicap space. Then we have 3 parallel spaces along the sidewalk behind the building mostly underneath the structure, and then we would circulate out basically at the existing driveway. There's an existing pretty wide driveway here that we're proposing to narrow a little bit, and then they would egress out onto Main Street that way. And the entrance at East Street is also fairly wide because this whole corner is presently paved. There's a parking space right here, but the whole corner is paved, so wherever we can, we're introducing landscape elements, and that's a corner where we're gonna introduce a landscape element, so we're gonna rebuild the sidewalk here to kind of shrink the entrance, the existing curb cut to what that 20-foot wide driving aisle will be for the parking lot. That's about it. You know, as Phil mentioned, 9 one-bedroom apartments, no parking required for the commercial component, only for the residential component, so, you know, we're 1 space short as we sit presently. Happy to answer any questions you guys have.
So,
Yeah.
it all comes down to parking for this. That's really what we're talking about.
Yes.
If you were to take this and make it 8 units and just expand commercial up on the second, like, make it an 8-unit apartments, 8 units of apartments, and expand the commercial, you wouldn't have to be
That is
seeking any
correct.
relief. Okay,
We'd also have the same, if not more, traffic from the commercial component than we would from the residential unit.
well, we don't know that, and what we're looking at is the zoning bylaw. And so I'm trying to figure out how you meet the parking requirement, you know, without granting relief if it's not necessary. So I go back to my question, why not expand your commercial and make it 8 units?
Because historically, if you look at downtown, there is a hard enough sell, if you will, to rent first floor commercial. We do have a unit on the second floor that is commercial. We are gonna do our darndest to rent it. But if you look through Center Walpole or East Walpole, Walpole right now, for better or worse, is not overly attractive for second floor office space. There just isn't a market. And we're not asking for a variance, so respectfully, and, you know, certainly you can decide one way or another. As long as we're not detrimental to the neighborhood, that's really the threshold. If it were variance, that'd be totally different, and I would be agreeing with you, we'd probably be knocking a unit off. But we looked at it, this board, I think, did a good job requiring basically a net wash or no loss when the two large apartments were permitted, but neither of those have attracted the restaurants that at the time were anticipated for both. And there just isn't a huge market, if any, for the second floor. So whether ITE says it's more or less, practically speaking, that's why we're here and asking for one space versus, we could have asked for two, but to your point, we're trying to make a reasonable request to the board that makes sense for everybody.
The other board members?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's familiar with that intersection and the proximity of that driveway to the existing intersection. And have you looked at, you know, entrance and exit based on the queues that build up at the lights and things like that? I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're going from a commercial use now to a mixed use, so that maybe that the net traffic generation is lower as a result of the changes in use. But my concern would be, for example, somebody driving towards Main Street on East Street, trying to take a left into the, and stopping there and waiting for traffic to clear through the intersection and then turning left. There's really not a way to get around that. So I guess my concerns are more, not so much with the quantity of vehicle traffic, but just the practical realities of entering and exiting the site so close to the intersection.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a challenging site, right? We know that. It's on the corner of a busy intersection. So we do the best we can, which is to, you know, push the driveway entrances as far away from the intersection as we can, which we've done here. But you don't get away from the fact that when you have an existing commercial site on the corner of a busy intersection, it's a challenging traffic circumstance. So we basically make the best of it that we can.
And you mentioned that there's no parking required under the zoning, but do you anticipate the reality being that people coming to work or visit the commercial space is gonna park there? It's not exclusively for residents of the.
Right, and that's why, you know, we're trying to get as many spaces as we can. You know, we have 9 one-bedroom units. You know, we're not asking for 9 spaces. We're asking for 17, which, you know, certainly will provide parking spaces for the commercial component. You know, when you have 9 one-bedroom units, you're not gonna have 9 people with 2 cars. You know, a few of them might have 2 cars, but not all of them. So there will be some spaces available for the commercial component, which is a benefit.
And we haven't addressed that yet, but I expect it to come, so we may as well at this point. In the past, this board has put as a condition of approval that basically, it was easy the last time I did this. We asked for 8 one-bedrooms for 8 spots, so it was across the board. Each lease will have a requirement or a restriction, you can only have 1 car. So certainly for any unit that would be allowed by your good auspices, we would submit the same thing, that unit has to, in its lease, be restricted to 1 car.
So in a way, that actually gets you down to your 17 parking spots
Yes,
with a lease restriction
It would.
as a condition.
yes.
Okay. Or you could just do more commercial. Use a unit.
If we could rent it, John, we would.
What's the current width of the parking spaces that you have proposed?
They're 9-foot spaces.
What's the depth of the width?
Well, they're angled, so that's the width, and then you know, the zoning bylaw has a specific table for different angles of parking with dimensional requirements. So for 60-degree parking, which is what we have, it's the perpendicular depth of the space is 19 feet, but the angle depth, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, is longer than that. But the zoning bylaw has a specific configuration requirement for 45-degree parking, 60-degree parking, 90-degree parking, maybe 30-degree parking too. There's a whole table in there. So this is laid out in compliance with that. The only difference is the wider driving aisle. I think there's, for 60-degree, I think there's only a 15-foot wide aisle required. We widened that 4 feet to 20 feet at the fire department's request.
16.
I'm asking about the width of the parking spaces, because you show 3 columns in the back of the building to hold up that floor.
Yep.
And how are they gonna interfere with your parking spaces?
Well, those columns can be positioned in areas where they're not, like, I left a small gap here.
I
for
see the one
columns.
gap, but the other 2 columns don't show that gap.
And then on this corner, they could take the column and pull it off the corner of the building if they had to. That's something that hasn't been designed yet, the column spacing. That's something that would occur when they go forward. If they go forward and design for the building permit, they would figure out exactly how many columns and where they need to be. And we could make minor adjustments if we need to the spacing of those parking spaces to accommodate that.
Okay. How many of the spaces do you have proposed any of the spaces to be charging stations or anything for cars?
We don't presently, no.
Okay. What about deliveries for business or whatever? Are they gonna park on the Main Street or East Street?
Well, no, there's some room where they could temporarily park in here. There's actually an area here, but that's outside of the 20-foot width where a delivery vehicle could park if they wanted to.
Would that block the fire line?
No, it would not. That's the outside the fire lane.
Business employees parking, is that proposed? Are those tenants, are they restricted, or it's open to anyone?
Well, we wouldn't restrict it. No, presently, it's kind of an operational consideration, so right now, it would be proposed to be unrestricted as to, designated spaces. But, if it goes forward and the tenant, the apartments get rented out, Dunelm at that point might decide to designate certain spaces for those apartments.
Okay.
And he may, add signage for that, but that becomes kind of an operational consideration of, if you've got 9 one-bedroom apartments and they all have 1 car, now you only need 9 spaces for them, but maybe 2 or 3 of them have 2 cars. So, you gotta you gotta adjust based on who your tenants are.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have a concern of coming in off of East Street, those first 2 spaces angled in, it looks like to get out, they're gonna have to back out over the sidewalk.
The second one, no. The first one, yeah. There's one there presently in the same location.
Yeah, and I've sat in traffic watching people back out onto East Street, and it's,
Right, so
it's
this is,
not good.
this
but-
is kind of a consideration of,
Right.
in the downtown area, you try to get as many parking spaces as you can. Is it better to have it or to take it away? I think that will probably be a topic of conversation tomorrow night, which is why we're not asking to close tonight, because, the planning board may ask us to remove that last space, and that would bring us to 16 instead of 17.
So things could change tomorrow night, you might be back asking for,
We might be asking for 2 spaces.
Two
And
less
then we would have
spaces.
to restrict 2 units to keep the numbers correct.
that's it, thank you.
I just had one question. The handicap spot, is that under the back half, or is that exposed?
That's exposed.
Okay.
I can't really put it under the back half, because you can't configure parallel spaces in a way that conforms with the AAB regulations, and it has to be as close as we reasonably can be to the building entrance. So to get it under here would mean back here, which is too far away.
And this might be a discussion for tomorrow night too, but it looks like you're proposing snow storage on the, basically abutting East Street in both locations, and I guess there would just be a concern that once the piles get to a certain height, they might start obstructing views.
They're,
along
they're
the road.
gonna have to pull snow off the site if there's a major storm. There's no way around it, and it will just be what manner of condition is on the site plan. Because that's exactly what happened, I don't know if you remember years ago when the CVS Plaza decided to push all of its snow towards the street instead of towards the train, and we had like a 50-foot pile for months, because that takes a long time to melt, which spawned a standard condition in the site plan thereafter.
So, does the owner of the property own any of the adjacent
No,
lots?
No.
Okay.
That's
The reason why I'm asking that is to see if there's some parking.
I can tell you, we have asked him, and he has said absolutely not,
Absolutely
not.
not what?
He won't share parking with anybody.
The adjacent owner.
The adjacent owner.
The adjacent owner,
But the
yes.
adjacent owner is not the same owner
No,
as this one?
Mr. Murphy as trustee owns literally what's in gray.
Okay.
Everything that's in white surrounded is owned by it's owned by a trust that owns we'll call it the CVS Plaza. It's actually 4 different lots. And he has been approached on numerous occasions by numerous people, and there is not going to be an accommodation with
Okay.
them. I had to talk to him yesterday just for him not to try and appeal this, so.
So the parking behind Conrad's is owned by,
The same, I forget the actual name, I think it's Walpole Limited Partner.
Yeah, Walpole Realty LP.
okay. So we can't squeeze any additional parking spots out of an adjacent property?
No.
Okay.
We have explored that and been rebuffed.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? You said you want to continue this?
Yes, please.
And I think that's good. What about the swath path for fire trucks?
That was provided, so if you read his memo, he indicated that that was okay. That was acceptable to him. His first item on that list was, we provided it, the sweep path analysis, and it was acceptable. The subsequent 3 items were things he asked us to change, like where the address number is on the building. He wants it on the Main Street side, not on the East Street side, and a couple of other things that we'll incorporate.
Okay, and that came out today. That's why I didn't see it in the, okay, so you've addressed that. How about a traffic study as, and it's not, when I first saw it, I was thinking, you know, we don't need a full traffic study of the intersection. But what about a traffic study just to make sure that people can egress and, you know, come into the site and egress the site safely? And I'm particularly concerned about that lot, that parking spot that Judy referenced, right there.
Take that one.
I guess I'd ask that we be given, before we go off down the road of some kind of traffic study, maybe just let me have an opportunity to work with the town engineer to see if, you know, if he, and he may ask for some changes, but if he thinks that what we have proposed is reasonable, you know, would that be sufficient for you? If you know, would you still want us to do some kind of traffic study if Carl indicates to you that he's reviewed it and he thinks it's okay? And he and I have had some preliminary discussions. I think he was gonna want me to explore some other options, and, you know, there are things we can do with signage and hatching off certain areas to kind of control vehicle movements. I'm not sure.
It's, as you know, it's a tight spot, and I'm really also concerned about next to Conrad's, where you could have a person walking along the sidewalk and a car come out of this property, and, you know, it appears as if it's right up against the brick wall right there.
There's actually, if you remember, I don't know, a year or 2 ago, back when everybody was eating outside, there's a swath there that is actually owned by the abutter.
Okay.
And that will stay undeveloped. So there, it kind of, you can almost see it on that picture there, between the building, about 20 feet.
It's an 18-foot wide
18 foot
passageway.
wide, yes.
Here.
So that will remain, well, it's not part of our project, so I can't tell you what the abutter's gonna do, but there's, to the best of my knowledge, no plans to put anything there.
But there are things we
Okay,
could do
so,
for
yeah.
pedestrians, signage and things like that. So I guess I'd ask to be given an opportunity to work with the town engineer to see what kind of improvements could be made to the layout, to address those concerns.
I think what would give me some more comfort would just be a comparison, just a basic calculation using the ITE, comparing what the bank would have generated versus what the project will generate.
Oh, I actually already produced that. I didn't submit it to you, I submitted it to the planning board, but I have a letter that I will provide that to you. It's a quarter to a half, depending on whether the commercial use is an office or a retail space. So we provided a range. And it's anywhere from a quarter to a half of what a bank with a drive-through would generate per ITE. So I'll submit that
Okay.
to you.
So I'm looking at the exiting driveway. There's a stop line there,
Yes.
and it looks as if it goes right up to the Conrad building. Is that,
Yeah, it's in that passageway.
so that passageway, is that part of the passageway, is that part of your property?
No, but the applicant has rights to use it.
Okay. So you just talked about this 20-foot swath, this 20-foot, that's where the driveway is.
Right.
So my concern still stands that somebody could be coming out of this one-way drive, and somebody could be walking on the sidewalk
Yep.
and step right there.
Yep.
Because there's gonna be a brick wall right next to the vehicles coming out.
Right, and,
Okay.
yes, so, again, I would say, let me have a chance to work with Carl on that question. I think that's one of his questions as well. Like I say, there are things we can do. You know, for example, if I were to relocate this, you know, my 20-foot driveway becomes almost 30 feet, and we can direct, you know, with striping and signage, although the whole width would be available for the fire department, we can direct, you know, vehicular traffic to, you know, come out down here, further away from the corner of the building, which will open up sight distance. It will open up opportunity for a pedestrian to be easily seen. So there are a couple of things that we could do there, and certainly introducing signage about, you know, watch for pedestrians, that kind of stuff. But I'll work with Carl on that question, and any other questions that he has, and I imagine he will have a few questions that I'll need to address, and then we can come back and talk to you guys about that,
Okay.
if that's okay.
I'm just writing notes for next time what we're gonna need. So you expect to have some revisions anyways to this plan?
Sure.
Yes.
So we'll be able, but I think this is a good introduction tonight. Yeah. Are there any abutters here to speak or have any questions about this?
So, question I'm just checking out, but maybe you know offhand, is just straight multifamily allowed in this district?
No.
So the-
Yeah, no, it's only mixed use that's
It's only if
allowed
you
by
get-
rights. That you can't do 100% residential.
Right.
Not until,
Because that, my,
We
I
change
mean,
zoning.
this is not a zoning question, but the market issues that you reference are very real for downtown, and it would, this is sort of a marquee intersection, if you will, in town,
Yes.
and it would be a shame if the, you know, the basis for getting the residential component is really the commercial piece, and if that just looks shiny and new, but there's nobody going in and out of it, it would be
It would be a
a
shame.
shame.
yeah, that's the struggle, is you're not allowed, you know, it would be nice to have some purely residential components downtown, but you're not allowed to do that. It has to be a mixed use.
Okay. When do you want to continue to?
The 7th.
December 7th? the request of the applicants, could I have a motion to continue this case until December 7th
So
at
moved.
7 PM here at Town Hall?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Judy, second by Drew. All those in favor of continuing until the 7th, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay.
Thanks for your time.
We'll see you on the 7th. Okay, we have some minutes to go over. First one is from July 20th. And I don't have any,
I think there was one item that Patrick was gonna run down on those minutes that we can. I think it had to do, Judy, with a site plan date or a plan date.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's been corrected, because our, yeah, they had an August 4th date for the last revision for our,
which
Motion?
one are we talking about?
page 6.
Yep.
On, High Plain, 173 High Plain.
Oh, yeah.
That's been corrected, because the plan we referenced was 7/14/2022.
Yes, 7:14.
Okay, so you're good with that?
Yep.
So, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes of July 20th, 22?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Judy,
Second.
second by Drew. Any further discussion on those minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Next one is on the set of minutes. I had one thing, on page 2, Patrick, at the very bottom, it said, Mr. Lee opened the hearing to the public. And that is, now that I reread it, it's good. Okay. Okay. Bob, did you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple things on page 3. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 6th paragraph up from the bottom, where it starts with Ms. Conroy asked.
Yep.
In the very last few words of that paragraph, it says tow commercial vehicles, and that should be 2.
Yep.
And 2 paragraphs down, Mr. Glossa.
Oh, Mr. Bloss.
I also, on page 4 of that one, the motion was to allow more than one commercial vehicle within the residential zoning district with conditions. I think we said no more than 2. I don't know if we need to have that, but,
No more than 2 vehicles?
yeah, no more than two commercial vehicles, because as I read this, I was just thinking, we were allowing more than one commercial vehicle, but,
So the language I got on review is the maximum of 2 commercial vehicles, which is, I think, on the 3rd paragraph down.
I think when it references with conditions, one of those conditions
Okay.
was that we were limiting it to 2.
that's good. Okay, with those the corrections identified by Bob, does anybody have anything else? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 5th?
So moved.
Moved by Judy,
Second?
second by Tim. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. Our next, coming up, we've got a couple next meeting will be on the 16th, so 2 weeks from tonight. And then we just continued, this 2 cases until the 7th, December 7th, and we'll see what happens there. Patrick, you said what do we have, one case?
So we may, one new public hearing for the 16th, we may actually have possibly someone coming in for a discussion regarding 173 High Plain Street with, I'm sorry, Mr. American had reached out today, discussing changing the plan of record and approaching the board about that as part of the, I think it was part of the planning board conditions. So that will probably be another topic for the 16th. And that's, just received another case today, so we may have possibly another public hearing for the 7th as well.
Good. Does anybody have anything else for the board? Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Bob,
Second?
second by Tim, very close there. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. Good night, everybody.